Next on Blast from the Past is the number 11 of the Frankston Football Club, the charismatic Rick Lewis. I remember Rick Lewis arriving the year I was here in '74. He'd gone to coach Rye as a very young man, and he came back to play season '75. And he arrived with his long, blonde, surfy looks and his great upbeat personality. What a great character Rick Lewis is. He's had a terrific career as a policeman, self-described best policeman money could buy. Rick provided a lot to this club in terms of his brevity, his levity, his comedy. He was a leader of men. He could get a message over to people in a very comical way. He always looked to make a situation better, in my view. And as I said earlier, I actually modelled myself a little bit on Rick Lewis as a school teacher, because I saw the value of his comedy and his approach in a diverse group of people. So Rick Lewis, he wasn't the greatest footballer of all time, but he was prepared to contest every issue, and no one ever beat Rick Lewis mentally. So good on you, Rick. Looking forward to what you have to say on Blast from the Past.
Yeah, well, I started down here at Frankston when they were in the MPFL. That was in 1965. I was 13 at the time and playing in the under-15s. The next year, 1966, Frankston decided to go into the VFA. Obviously, they only had a under-19 competition, and 14 I was probably a little bit young, and went to the Frankston MPFL team that started up in around the Canada football ground. I stayed there playing under 15, then under 17 football, and then at aged 18 I came back down to Frankston to try my luck down here. Ray Vaughan, I think, was the coach back then. I played first half a dozen games in the reserves, and then managed to get my first senior game about 6-7 weeks in. And basically I stayed here at Frankston until about, we won the 78 grand final. No, before the 78 grand final I went to Rye when I was 22 years of age, played captain coach of Rye for 1 year, and then came back to Frankston because I missed the place so much, and was lucky enough to be back in around about 76, 77 and play in the 78 grand final, and then play 2 or 3 years in first division football, and I was getting a bit long in the tooth. Then I went to Hastings, had a year of captain and coaching Hastings. A year down there is like 10 years anywhere else. And then where most of us do from this club, we retire down at Seaford, where it's a nice small ground and it's enclosed by trees, and it's sandy surface. So I ended up finishing my football career down at Seaford, which was a football club that my father coached. So that was good to get down there and do that. Yeah, well, I've been reported 16 times playing football, and I think that's just in the VFA actually. And of course, every time, bar one, every time I went there I was guilty, and I got off maybe half of those, but I did spend a lot of time on the sidelines, which probably is one of the reasons I never got to 100 games here at Frankston, which is probably one of my regrets actually, that I didn't get to 100 games. I got to 83. But I remember one day we were playing Sandringham out here, and it was silly Snooks was the umpire, and running down with the ball was a Pledger, and David Pledger, and he was running towards goal. It was just before 3/4 time. We were 5 or 6 points up. He was running into an open goal, and I figured that he had to be stopped. So I put out my arm and gave him a classic coat hanger, just as he handballed over my head to Terry Wilkins, who was running through the centre. And Terry was all but going to kick a goal. And my ploy worked because silly Snooksy stopped the game, brought the ball back to where Pledger was lying prostrate on the ground, turned me around and gave them the free kick around about, there was no 50-metre arc, but it was around about 50 metres out. And much to the chagrin of Terry Wilkins, who was running into an open goal. I got 6 weeks for that, and I probably deserved it as well. For hitting John Hook, I got the 2 weeks. I could sit them out in the practice games. I had to sit 6 weeks out in normal home and away games. That doesn't help, especially when you're not injured. Just trying to think who else. Reports. I remember David Rees-Jones. He played down here and was captain coach. He got reported in a match down here. I think it was either 2 or 3 times. And I went up as his representative, as his advocate to the VFA tribunal. He didn't need me, I tell you. He was more adept at doing the looking after himself and knowing what to say in front of a tribunal. He walked out of there not guilty on both. But the only time I wasn't guilty was, once again, we're playing Sandringham, and Mark Saru, or his brother, one of the Sarus, was playing for Sandringham, and an all-in brawl erupted. It was a TV game anyway. It was on for young and old, and he came in and started punching me, and I got reported for punching him. He got reported for punching me. And I'd already done a bit of damage. I was on my way out and wasn't sort of picked up on the coverage. And we went to the tribunal, and poor old Mark, poor old Mark got 4 weeks for hitting me, and I got found not guilty of hitting him because I'm just basically on my way out. I mean, they didn't hurt either. I mean, it was like a bit of a cream puff. So not something I'm proud of, 16 reports, but I was more the retaliator rather than the instigator. Although the couple of instances I've told you about, I guess I was the instigator. Oh well. It certainly opened doors for me later on. Yeah, the 78 grand final, my particular role, I was on a half-back flank. No wings in those days, as you may or may not remember. But I was pretty fit in 78 because I was actually doing my recruitment in the police force at the time. So I was out at Glen Waverley at the academy, and the training out there was fairly full on. I could handle that, but it was extra training for me. But I had a slight injury, and I had to come down here Thursday night and do a bit of training one-on-one with Brian, just to prove my fitness, and I managed to get through that. Anyway, as I said, I was on the half-back flank, and before the game, Brian got 4 of us. He took 4 of us aside from the main group. I think it was Murray Ridsdale, John Stapleton and Alan Harper, and I'm wondering what the hell we're doing aside, and Brian told us in no uncertain terms, we will win this game at any cost. So if I tell you to do something, then you do it. It was quite frightening really, because to see the look in his eyes, I'm telling you, if we didn't do whatever he said, we'd be facing up to Brian. Halfway through the second quarter, well, before the game had even started, there was a bit of a melee as the two teams came together. I can't remember much about the melee itself, only that I got there fairly quick. But it didn't last long, and the umpires sort of separated it. But halfway through the second quarter, we were having a shot at goal, and John Hook, and he was threatening John Kennedy, our captain, and unfortunately for Hookie, he had his mouth guard at the time, and that was about the time I leaned over and pushed my fist into his face, and down he went. And to his credit, he didn't go down, but he buckled at the knees, and the field umpire, the reserve field umpire, came out, and the emergency umpire, though it were, and says, "You're reported, Lewis." And I sort of suggested that he'd better get off, otherwise he'd end up the same way. So my role, I guess, I was a half-back flanker. I dished out a bit of weight here and there, and anyway, that worked. At the end of the day, I got 2 weeks suspension for that, and I think I only got 2 weeks because it was John Hook, to be honest. And I sat them out in practice games, as you could do back in those days, so really it wasn't any penalty at all. But I remember I was graduated from the police academy, and I was sitting at work, and I got a letter from a solicitor. And from all these letters you get from solicitors, I didn't expect one from John Hook's solicitor asking me for $800 to pay for his teeth. Oh well.
Teeth incident with Hookie, I actually witnessed it because I was on the ground at full back, and I saw the round arm as Hookie was 50 metres away from the ball, and Hookie's running towards the ball, and round arm into his face. And the involvement was, I was a lawyer at the time. Hookie asked me to act for him. Hookie only ever wanted, he didn't want compensation, he just wanted his medical costs paid. So before the days of sports law, nobody knew anything about sports law. So I did a letter of demand to Frankston and asked for Hookie's expenses, and I think I got one reply, which was basically take a running jump. But I persisted and wrote a second letter, and that letter received the right response, and we got paid. Because there was no doubt it was an incident not within the rules, not within the spirit of the game, and so we had basically an assault case on our hands.
Well, winning the '78 premiership was just it is one of the 5 best moments of my life. I've got four kids, and winning that premiership in 1978. I've still got the T-shirt that we were given on the day. I've got the medallion still, and the memories and those 17 other blokes I played with on that particular day, I'll never lose them. They are mates for the rest of our life, for the rest of my life anyway, which is probably not that long to go. It's just so hard to put it into words what it means to me. Had we have lost, I would have been, as much as I'm ecstatic, I would have been just saddened and depressed about it all for all this time. But to win that premiership and then go into First Division and play First Division football against the Dandenongs, the Port Melbournes, those types of clubs, the Sandringhams, it was just amazing. It was fantastic, and we didn't go back down. We had enough talent and recruited more talent to stay up there. That's about all I can really put into words about how I feel about that particular game. And to see the look of happiness and joy on the Alan Wickses, the Brian Maces, and the supporters around the club who'd stuck with us, because we should have perhaps won one in '77, but we didn't, and that was probably a more talented side in '77. But '78, we really worked hard. Poor old Alan Harper couldn't raise his arm above that height, but he managed to get through and help us. Johnny Hunter kicked 6 goals, I think. John Kennedy played really well. Boyd, he did those long raking kicks. Jones, he was a superstar. Where are you? There he is. He was a superstar. Yeah, so it was great. Football back in my day was sort of like slow motion. There wasn't the running game that it is today, and if you were injured, you went off and another player came on and you were off for the rest of the day. So injured players tended to stay on. It was stop and start. There was no room for shirking any issue. If you had to back into a pack, you backed into a pack, and there were packs to back into. Not like today where they chip the ball around and the ball flows and gets down to its target fairly quickly. Back in those days with the ground, and the wet, muddy ground, and the heavy football, and the fact that players weren't fully professional, and we trained twice a week. It was slow and it was hard, and you didn't shirk any issue, because if you did and you got found out, it was very, very embarrassing. We played in a style of game with only 16 aside, so we didn't have any wingers. So I guess there was a fair bit of run for the half forwards and the half backs. The centre player could run virtually where he wanted. Full forwards were a very focal point. Frankston always wanted to have a good full forward. That's why we got Ken Jungworth down, Renato Serafini down. They figured that if you had a good full forward, you could perhaps win more games. Wasn't always the case when Junga was around. But the game was televised on TV back then. It was only Sunday game, so the Prestons and the Port Melbournes and the Dandenongs were always good value to watch on the television. And that's the type of game that it was. It was slow, it was brutal, and there was no quarter given and none asked for. If you couldn't compete in that environment, then you didn't get a game. Look, I'm a person who loves the game. I've loved the game since I was, 10, 12 years of age. I've been involved with the game consistently. I'm now 64 years of age. Football has given me a lot, and I hope that I've given back a lot to football, because it's probably not the football, but it's the people you're involved with. Some great people, especially around this club, like Alan Wicks, to mention one, Brian Mace, Chris Pavlo, Con Pavlo, Heck Gamble, who had these things printed up when we won the grand final in '78. So that's how I describe myself in relation to football. It's just opened so many gates for me, and I hope that I've given a lot back. Yeah, well, my life outside of football, or when I finished football, I obviously had a police career, and I've still am in the police force. I was lucky enough to get a job at the AFL and be their investigations officer, as well as their racial vilifications officer, and as well as their reporting officer, which meant that I had to go to the tribunals every Tuesday night and prosecute cases, for want of a better term. The first thing I did, while we're talking about that, the first thing I did when I went to the AFL and became the reporting officer and prosecuted the cases on behalf of the umpires was the umpires used to hang around and wait for a result. The first thing I did is I said to them, look, I think you should go in, give your evidence and then go. Don't wait around for the result, because it looks like you're waiting around to smile on somebody else's bad luck that they got reported and they've been outed for some weeks. I think we'll get a much better arrangement and a lot better rapport with players if you don't do that. If you just go in, give your evidence and then go and let the result take care of itself and not be there to look as if you're gloating over the fact you've just outed a player for a couple of weeks. And of course, once the umpires went, they could see what a lousy job I did at cross-examining the players when they came and told their lies, I suppose. But anyway, that's part of what I've done. I'm actually very involved with soccer at the moment. I'm a member of the Melbourne Victory Soccer Club, and I love soccer. I think it's a great sport, and I'm learning a lot about that game. I'm at the moment. I've been overseas with a boxer, Sam Solomon. Been lucky enough. John Locko roped me into that, and been overseas 3 or 4 times to watch Sam fight. Watch him win a world title twice in Germany, and been over to the States with him. So go around to the various boxing venues of Friday or Saturday night, and sort of semi-involved in that. And of course I'm still in the police force, and that takes up a fair bit of my time. I've re-partnered with a girl that's an inspector in the police force. So I'm a sergeant, she's an inspector, and she's the true love of my life. She's a bit younger than me. She'd have to be, really, because I'm getting old at 64. So we do a lot of things together. We go. She's a mad North Melbourne supporter. I'm a mad Hawthorn supporter. So we go to the football a bit together, and we go to the soccer. And I've got 2 boys that both play soccer, and I've got my daughters who were born around about the time I was playing footy here. So I'm fairly blessed, I think. I've got 4 lovely kids, as I've already said. Got a couple of ex-wives who I've each bought a house for. But for me, life's pretty good, and it's a bit of a party, really. And I enjoy my job, and I'd probably do the police force job for nothing. I get that much enjoyment out of that.